Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, Call It Crew. We have a very special episode for you today that we're very excited about. We teased it out, and so many of you guys wrote in.
It is juicy, juicy, juicy. I'm ready for all of it. I can't wait to see what we learn.
It is about sex toys. It's about sex. It's about conversations around sex. It's about all the different things we're feeling and inside, outside,
Thinking all of it.
mentally.
And we went to Zoe, who is a celebrated sex educator. She's a journalist and she is a dildo duchess.
She's the dildo duchess.
We're going to find out about that. I need to start there, maybe.
We start there. Yes, and you guys got vulnerable with us. We're gonna be getting vulnerable with you guys on this episode, and we're gonna dive straight in. Let's bring in our dildo duchess.
Thanks for having me.
We're both very excited about this episode.
Me too.
Well, I'm Jessica.
Nice to
It's
meet you.
nice to meet you.
I'm Camilla. We have teased out. Jessica and I went to Chicago recently, and we were in front of in a conference room full of fans, and they said, "What is the most exciting episode you have coming up?" And we teased this episode out. I said our homework is test driving sex toys.
Hard work. Someone's got to do it.
Someone has to do it. And by the way, we were there, and after the convention, we went to dinner, and we're sitting there at dinner, and Camilla looks at her phone and breaks into her phone and breaks into laughter because,
My husband texted me and he was like, "Your vibrators came."
okay, I remember is when I looked at your phone, it was just a picture of the vibrator box, and then I think he said a vibrator came for you in the mail.
I think he knew it was coming. He did know it was coming.
Oh, see, I thought it was a total surprise.
Are you kidding? I've been banging on about this episode for weeks now.
I hope it came discreetly because, sometimes they don't.
And also, just to go back to where our curiosity started, or where my curiosity started, was when we first started the podcast, one of our very early episodes. Because I think when you start this kind of thing, we talk a lot about we started as actresses. And so often you kind of like guard information, or you just don't want to be so intimate or bring like the super personal stories. And in the beginning of the podcast, we realized, for sure that's the most important part of this all is how we're connected. And we really, we connect over vulnerability and being able to talk about things and in a real way. And so one of the first stories that I told that I felt like a little on tenterhooks telling because I just hadn't in a public way before. I had talked about, what going to buy a vibrator and asking and feeling like nervous and not sure what to ask and just didn't actually even want to talk or make eye contact with anyone. And then once I finally could get through the experience of being in a sex toy shop and buying a vibrator, that as I got to the cash register, I completely like just jumped off my train of confidence and asked them to gift wrap it because clearly it wasn't for me. It was obviously for someone else. And so I'm wondering if you gift wrap in your shop.
So we're an online store and everything comes like wrapped in tissue paper. So we're not generally gift wrapping individual items, but I used to work in a brick and mortar 10 years ago in Soho. So I had my share of experiences with people, you know, even remembering my own experience being 18 going into a sex toy store. I mean, now I sell them and it is my wheelhouse, but I remember that first time being like, get me out of here. I don't want to think about what all these different things do. And it wasn't that I didn't have a comfort around sex, but obviously sex education does not teach you about that. You're lucky if you get any level of comprehensive sex ed, but what does like looking at a harness, thinking about all those things. Oh no, here's the butt toy section. What like it just opens all these portals if you're walking in. And I think I was just getting novelty handcuffs for a college roommate at the time. And then I was just like, oh my goodness.
No, I still when I walk into a sex store and with my husband, I feel intimidated because I still don't know how half the things work. I don't know how you find out they work other than maybe asking the person that works there, which is feels weird. The only one I remember really back in the day even knowing the name of was the rabbit. And I feel like maybe that's because Sex and the City made it
For sure.
famous. Right.
Definitely.
And it's like everyone, that was like that was my first ever sex toy because it made it feel like it was okay to get that one. Like it had pop
Because the
culture.
girls had
Yeah,
had it.
the girls had it,
Yeah.
so I could get it and it was okay.
By the way, the girls done the things that I never did, just so we're clear.
They also, the magic wand is another one.
Oh, I think that is actually the real OG,
Oh,
right? That's like
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
the real OG.
Rabbit, magic wand.
Yes. But there's so many new toys out there, and I'm lost and I'm 40 and I don't want to be lost. I want to know. And the crew, they've sent us in questions and everything for today, but they're curious, they want to know too. So I want to ask you first because your nickname is the Dildo Duchess, which is incredible. How did
Very
you get
clever.
that name?
I was just like, that's an alliteration. I really like it. I love dildos. I really love talking about them too, because I think that, not to like get into the weeds so early on, but I like a lot of toys that I think the average person is like, ew, who would use that? Ew. And especially when I was working in a brick and mortar, I had a lot of fun being like, actually me, something that's like larger or longer or like has a crazy texture on it. I found that those were things that were getting really knee-jerk shocking reactions from people. And, I had literally have so many sex toys in my house that I periodically will donate unopened ones to like LGBTQ plus organizations or sex work organizations, or, if they're boilable or testers, I'll just be like, I have so many of these things. I do not know what to do with them. My whole basement is devoted to them. So
So she's a real Duchess.
it's a problem, but it's also my business. So
That's how
it's
she got
not
her
a
name.
problem.
Yeah.
When people are ordering online, what is it that is the most popular thing that you find that people are ordering?
There's definitely fads that come and go. I think we might all remember the rose from I
Oh,
mean, I don't know if that was
yeah.
just TikTok, but the rose was really viral in like 2021-ish. It still
Yes.
sells really well, but there was a moment that was all people were talking about because it's cute. It's easy to put on social media without it looking like a
Yes.
body part.
Right, right, right.
But that has not sustained into 2024. I mean, it still sells, but the novelty has worn off a little bit. I think it'll stick around.
Anything that's effective usually does.
Exactly. I mean, Magic Wand was patented in the 70s.
Is that what you just showed us is the magic wand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the mini.
I personally know a woman who thought she was broken and thought I can never have an orgasm and was not young. I mean, she was young, but she was older than you would think for someone who has never had an orgasm. And that was, I think that one almost, correct me if I'm wrong, it almost seems like that one's pretty foolproof. Like if your body's going to have, if your body, because obviously, I mean, we're going to get into this, but my guess
Yeah.
is there are some women who actually cannot physiologically. But if you are able physiologically, the magic wand is going to be your shortest cut to an orgasm.
There's no such thing as something that is foolproof, but you are correct in thinking that it is a very popular one due to its power, that it is going to really intensely stimulate the body. And there are so many reasons that, I mean, specifically vulvas, we just don't have a lot of education about anatomy. Like the clit and the anatomy of the clit was really only fully understood in the mid 90s,
Mm.
whereas like penises, we've kind of understood
Oh, goodness.
how they work, how they feel, how we pleasure them. Like that's always been known.
You mean before the 70s, before the
Yeah,
1970s, we figured that out.
way back.
1800s type stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, even then, yeah. So we're just starting out with like a really lack of baseline knowledge, which creates a barrier to orgasm. Then on top of that, there's sexual trauma of any kind, medications that interact with your libido. And then I think a lot of it is also just like a huge gap in knowledge. But I like to be really straightforward in that, like, I'm a person who really only reliably gets off with sex toys. And I think that there is a little bit of shame in that for some people, thinking, I've heard people say things like, well, I like it the organic, natural, human way. It's like, okay, like,
Maybe they have more time than others.
yeah, if you are having pleasure, that is great no matter what. And if
Yeah.
you're not having orgasms, you are pre-orgasmic or orgasms just aren't on the table for you, there is so much pleasure to be had. But I think there is definitely such a big emphasis placed on orgasm. And magic wand, I mean, I'm kind of jumping all over the place
No,
here.
we love no, let's do it.
We jump around.
Yeah, we jump around. It's all good.
Yeah, it's super powerful. And some people find that the size or the sound of it is like a barrier to getting into it. They're like, what am I supposed to do with this big object in
Well,
the
again,
bedroom?
think back to the 1970s. You were also connected to the wall because it has a plug-in.
Yeah. There's no battery that can beat that either. There's nothing more powerful than a plug-in outlet.
When my friend was telling me the story, that was a component of it. Like truly that this appliance was plugged
Yeah.
into the wall.
Yeah, you need an adapter cord. You need an adapter cord.
Our crew is vast and we have all ages and all coming from all the places. We've got Europe, we've got the US, we've got South America, we've got everyone listening. And this is meant to be educational. This is meant to be empowering. This is meant to, illuminate how curious we all should be about our own sexuality and our pleasure. I think because I'm a mom, I have a son and 3 daughters. There's a lot of things that I'm interested in talking about that are even different than my own experience with sex, right? Like how to empower and teach a different generation and how as a female to empower my young male son and my 3 female daughters. So, we've talked a little bit about both of us were raised in Catholic households. So what was brought to our idea of sexuality from our culture and customs. And so that's a piece of it. And then I think you get into school age where, you're talking about sex education classes where I listen to my kids talk about it, and that's the last place that they want to hear about it.
Yeah.
So I feel for these schools that, that need to implement this layer of education, but sort of don't know how and they don't have the best way of going about it. And I think also I go back to, again, having a teenage son and an almost teenage daughter.
Okay, so for someone that is starting out, this is brand new to them.
I think versatility is really important for a first-time toy because, it depends what you want to stimulate. Are you looking to put a toy around a body part or inside of a body part? That's going to just boil down to personal preference. I think so much of it is going with your gut instinct to a certain extent. Also accepting that there will be a natural trial and error with the first thing you buy, you might not love. That does not mean all vibrators or all strokers and sleeves are going to have that exact same experience. You're looking for something that, has multiple speeds if it's motorized or has multiple ways it can be used so that if you don't like using it one way, there's another way you can use it. A really good example would be like a G-spot vibrator. If you don't like using it internally, most internal vibrators are also great as external massagers as well. A cock ring, for instance, if it's vibrating and you don't enjoy using it as a cock ring, you can use it as an external finger vibe, just as a couple ways that you could modify how you use something if you don't like its original marketed purpose, for instance.
I love that Camilla's face, by the way, is very serious. My face is very serious. But I wonder, Camilla, if while she was saying any of those words, you had what I had happening inside my body, which was like, oh my God, she just said cock ring. Oh my God,
I didn't. No.
What's a stroker and a sleever? Would you say a sleeve, a stroker? What is
Yeah, I'd say that's well, it's so funny too because the language I use on social media versus in-person conversations or there's so many words that are censored. So
Oh, right.
Stroker or sleeve is kind of
What is that
a
exactly?
euphemism for a fleshlight, for instance. Like,
What is a flashlight again?
okay.
Again, like you knew the first time, like you knew to start.
Did you know this? Do you know what a flashlight is? I've heard
No,
of
I'm
this.
admitting that I have no idea what she's talking about.
Is
There's
a
some
flashlight
lang
a fake vagina?
Yeah. So it's like, oh, I wish I just had one easily laying around.
It's a fake vagina that has sort of like an attachment, right? So you can insert yourself into it.
It's basically a tube that you can stick your
Okay.
penis into.
Hmm,
And
Okay.
sometimes it's open on both ends, sometimes it's closed at
Okay.
the end. The reason the fleshlight is called that is because it is cleverly contained inside of like a fake flashlight
Light.
container.
Okay.
But also to clarify, like fleshlight is kind of like saying Kleenex for tissue. A lot
Right.
of people will just say fleshlight when they mean
A
something that
variety
you
of,
penetrate.
yes. Got
Yes.
it.
okay,
Got it.
okay.
Understood.
Okay.
And then what I was thinking about when you were talking is I think that I've wondered, can they go inside you too?
That's a really good question because it's a complicated answer. It
Okay.
depends on the vibrator. For instance, this is not something you would want to insert simply because it wasn't designed to be inserted for starters,
Got it.
but this is like a hard plastic joint.
Right.
When people see this, it's so long that they think, okay, this is insertable. I don't think it would. I mean, I certainly wouldn't recommend doing that. This, which is completely silicone, so there's no interrupting parts, there's no like exposed screws or anything.
Right. And something that's silicone for the crew is is okay to put insert inside yourself. It is safe.
In general, silicone is one of the better materials to look for, along with like stainless steel and Pyrex glass, which is obviously a very different type of material. But silicone is not all created equal.
Okay. Yes, tell us.
Yeah, there's different manufacturing processes, and the way silicone is cured or just like the quality of it can really change a lot of factors. Overall, though, silicone, if it is genuinely indeed silicone, you're looking at a probably body safe product. The issue, and I mentioned this earlier when I was emailing back and forth with the
Yeah.
production team, is that there's not really any regulations on sex toys in the United States.
So we read
So
this before you
shocking.
came on and we were
Yeah,
floored.
Yeah.
I know. I don't want to like completely like
No,
that's
we
a
want to talk
whole other side of
no,
it.
but
Yeah.
we want to inform the crew of all the things and why your online sex toy store is Spectrum Boutique is so incredible is because of all the amazing products that you have. Because I read, is this true that dog toys are currently held to a higher material safety standard than adult toys? Is that true?
Yes. And that is because
Insane.
sex toys are kind of in this legal gray area of being novelties, where they are, you'll see a dildo and it will say novelty, not for intended for internal use. And a lot of that is just because there is so much taboo around sexuality and the subject matter of sex toys
Mm-hmm.
themselves
Mm-hmm.
that the government has kind of like not really done anything to create regulations, which is good in the sense that we don't want there to be super strict, like sex negative rules that prohibit the things we are allowed to manufacture because as history goes, a lot of times that is very misogynist or, not going to be considering, they're not going to be consulting with sex educators when they're making this policy. But at the same time, you leave this big open can of worms where you can kind of put any material on the market, call it whatever you want. There's not really any repercussions for it.
Mm.
So you have to just kind of, as a shop owner, my job is to work with brands where I have a direct line of communication with them. I can see the certificates on the electronics and the materials, and I can be like, cool, there's no lead in here, there's no phthalates in here, just for a couple of the big things to look out for.
Was that part of your motivation to start the store?
It came throughout the process of manufacturing my own toys because I realized that the tests you have to get done on an item that you manufacture are so expensive that a lot of people just don't want to do it.
Mm.
It really boils down to money and also just like a lack of information.
Yeah.
But I think that it's important to not like fear monger. I think sex toys,
Yeah.
even the safest car in the entire world, if you get into, you can get injured if you get in an accident.
Yeah.
Similarly with sex toys, you can, injure yourself if you use anything incorrectly. But my job as a retailer is to make the best possible decisions for my customers, only carry things I would want to be using, as far as like quality levels go. The issue is that we need to be able to make informed decisions. Like when we're at the grocery store, we're like, do I want to spend more money on the organic? Do I want to spend more money on the organic raspberries or just get the other ones? And that is the information that is lacking with sex toys. But that's really just like boils down to the taboo, not to get too off into my preachy mode on all of that.
No. What's your bestseller? Like, what is it? And are you selling primarily to men or women?
I would say that my personal audience is, according to Google and Instagram, millennial women. But we really have like customers from all walks of life. There's no such thing as being too old for a sex toy,
Yeah.
But I think that there is such a double standard with the stereotypes of like who likes what. Like vibrators can be enjoyed by anybody.
Right.
However, bestsellers, I brought a few choice items up. I mean, I already showed you the magic wand, but this is another toy.
For those listening, the magic wand, which started as something you had to plug into the wall, but now is cordless, would be an external, like sort of starter point for
your clitoris. It's to vibrate on your clitoris, right?
People also call them massagers because they're originally marketed as use them on your back, use them on your, your neck, your foot, like.
Okay. Yeah. If you come upon someone in their living room using a massager on their neck, my guess is it was somewhere else before it's on their neck.
Okay. So wait, I'm interested in this shiny space.
Yes. So now she's bringing out the shiny situation.
Okay. That looks good. I would not necessarily know what to do with this.
It's a more complicated one, but the reason I wanted to bring it out is because it is a bestseller in the sense that it has been around for a really long time and it continues to be very steadily popular, especially for its price point. It's about $110, which, for a dildo is a little pricey. So this is a stainless steel. This is called the La Wand hoop, but it is very similar to the original silhouette, which was the Enjoy Pure wand, basically just like a C shape that's made out of stainless steel. So you can use either end. There's so many different ways to use it. Some people use it in like a rocking motion for like very intense G-spot or prostate stimulation. Sometimes people kind of move it in and out in more of a tugging motion or a swiveling motion. It's really pinpoint pressure inside your body as opposed to a dildo that is just kind of like uniform, straight shape throughout.
Can I ask why it's made of metal? Why is it made of metal?
Stainless steel?
Is it because you can or stainless steel? Is it because you can heat it and cool it?
Yeah, that's one reason people like it. It's also so different having a hard material inside your body. Just like the resistance feels very different. But also like, there's zero bend to this and like silicone or, the human body obviously bends. So it's trying to mimic the like come hither motion, which is what it's generally called for how you want to finger somebody if you're stimulating their G-spot or prostate.
For those who have a hard time with this, who are sort of like going, I feel stigmatized or I feel ashamed even talking about this. Do you feel like you've had experience with people like that? And what do you feel like has been like the aha moment for you in speaking to people like that to help them get comfortable with whatever they're going to ultimately be comfortable with, right? Like you have to always check in with yourself. But has there been, a way of connecting with people and going like, oh, there was this aha moment. This is how they got over that stigma, that shame.
Totally. I think it really depends on the source of that and like what
Mm.
sets that off for that person individually.
Yeah.
I'm going to kind of go back to something you said earlier to answer this, which is that there's so many aspects of sex that aren't literally sexual. And a
Yeah.
lot of this has to do with sex education in school. Sex education doesn't have to be like the nuts and bolts and just the anatomy. Um, Really, like starting out at any age, you can talk about consent and boundaries, and you don't have to give Uncle so and so a hug if you don't want to, or I'm not going to make you eat this food if you're not hungry right now. Like giving a child the autonomy to think for themselves and decide yes or no so that they don't, feel like, oh, well, when I say no, it doesn't really matter. Because then, you start to internalize that.
That's such an incredible point and so well put.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So I think that whether the aversion to talking about sex is about like shame based, whether that be from messages we got when we were younger or negative experiences as an adult. Um, there are also people who are asexual and perhaps they really want companionship but not the sexual stimulation portion. And at the end of the day, we all want some level of intimacy with other people and ourselves, but maybe that isn't physical. Maybe that's just emotional. There's so much pleasure in companionship, and relationships aren't just romantic and sexual. There are platonic ones as well.
So I'm hearing you say that if you're feeling like there's a stigma or there's a shame around how you're thinking about or talking about sex, that it would be a good thing to examine the root of it, like where it came from. Because a lot of times these things can happen when we're younger and we get older and we're meant to evolve, we're meant to change. So checking in with our younger selves and saying like, does this still hold true? Do I still feel this way? Is this still, is the authority figure still the authority figure in my life? Who am I disappointing, right? By who am I disappointing by engaging in this conversation? Am I disappointing someone else or am I disappointing myself? These are all questions I think that are very valid to ask yourself as you're sort of starting to talk about sexuality in a very open way. I love this whole idea you were talking about selling mostly, or that a bulk of your clients were millennials. I love this whole sex positive. I mean, what would you call it? Is it a movement? Is it a phrase? And what does it mean? Because I've heard a lot of other people that were older be like, well, isn't that just another word for like, I mean, I don't know,
Being
insert the like
promiscuous.
annoying, yeah, the
Yes.
annoying and negative thought that you're just like, it's the slut shaming, right?
Yeah.
There can't be anything good that comes of all this sex. So now there's this whole idea that there's a sex positivity. So I mean, how would you explain that?
I think the definition has changed so much, especially in the last 10 years, because it's become one of those buzzwords that gets used in so many different contexts that it kind of becomes just a super generalized term. For me, I would define it as not having to be having it's not about having wild and crazy sex or kinky sex or anything like that. It is trying to foster a shame-free approach to it or your lack thereof, and an open-mindedness for the sex lives and needs of others, kind of excluding basically anything that isn't safe or consensual. Adults engaging in, consensual sex and all that, it's kind of like even if it's not for you, if it's, positive for somebody, not to yuck their yum. I think
Yeah.
that's one way of
Yeah.
putting it.
No, I love
But
that.
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you have to be down for every little sexual fad or like you have to have anal sex is a really big one I hear where people think that being sex positive means you must force yourself to do every sex act. or you must be non-monogamous or something like that.
I think that's such an important thing to
Yeah.
just break for a moment is that it is so important to consistently check in with yourself
Yeah.
about what is right for you. There's a lot of noise. The constant checking in with yourself about what you're excited to checking in with yourself about what you're excited to do and what you're comfortable to do and making sure that as much as it sounds nerdy in the throes of some fun stuff to check in. I think it's important to check
Yeah.
in.
What I love about this conversation is I see it more as, for me personally, in my journey, I didn't know what could make me orgasm. I felt lost myself. So when I had, in the early days when I had a partner, I didn't know what to tell them that I liked.
Right.
And so I feel like buying a sex toy, having those solo missions by yourself is really just like self-education, and I'm learning about my own body because I literally had no idea what would work to make me have an orgasm. I didn't know what speed, I didn't know where, I didn't know what I liked. And I just feel like it's an exploration of finding out more about yourself. So going and buying a sex toy, taking it home, seeing what feels good, seeing what doesn't feel good, I feel like then when you have your sexual partner, you're able to actually articulate what it is that's going to have you orgasm. And I hated the feeling of feeling lost. I was like, I guess that feels good. I don't know. Like, and I think that that's where so many people can I just think it's a way for everyone to embrace this idea that there's no shame around it. It's really just education about your body too. Like, how do I work?
Oh, I love every single thing you just said. I love everything you just said. And it's so, so, so true. And I think, by the way, that kind of thinking sort of led to a lot of the like when Harry met Sally stuff, right? Like the partner thinking, the other one had climaxed and it was like all just completely like what the other partner thought they were supposed to do, but they didn't know how to do. And I think we're living in a time where the sex positivity piece is that you can not know and that can be okay. And you can say something and you can fix that problem.
And it's a journey too. Even
Yes.
trying something and realizing you do not like it is part of figuring out and honing in what you do like. So I think
Yes.
that
Yeah.
a lot of the apprehension is like, what if I try this thing that works for everybody and it doesn't work for me? What does that say about me? There is no such thing as like a thing everybody likes. And again, figuring out like I really do not like, flickering sensations or whatever. Great. You've just learned a huge piece of information that will eventually help you get to what you do like.
So, in addition to the toys, do you have like conversation starters for people? I mean, people who are experiencing this sort of like, I don't know what to say or I don't know what to do. Like, is there advice that you have for
You're
getting,
talking about people in a relationship, like
yes,
okay,
yeah,
understood.
like how do you approach the conversation of you have a partner, you're really excited about all the things that are about to happen. You don't know how to talk about it, or you're not yet sure how, like what your operating instructions are, and like how do you start that conversation in a way that doesn't feel, I mean, that you don't worry about it feeling clumsy.
I also think it's like totally okay to be clumsy. It's part
Yeah.
but I know exactly what you mean. Even couples who have been together forever and ever, these conversations are like constantly evolving, and it's more of a journey than a one and done thing because the
Right.
type of sex you might be wanting to have, first thing in the morning on a Tuesday, if that's your time frame, versus, a week later, you're going to be in a different mental space. You're not going to feel the exact same way you did that exact moment.
Well, I think, by the way, that's why you need a partner that you really love. And no. It's not that you really love necessarily. It's that you feel really
Yeah.
comfortable with because all of these
Communication.
things, communication, but all of these things are very vulnerable and intimate, right? And so we're talking about moments where you might say, like, I don't like that. Can we try this? And having that confidence to not know that
Yeah.
your partner's like right there with you is gonna make your sex life so much better. Um, and I feel like I what I feel like happened, years ago, maybe it's still happening now, is I feel like also there was this thing where as a woman, you didn't want to bring a sex toy into sex because maybe you felt like the guy was feeling like he wasn't doing something well enough. And it was like, you're
Yeah.
bringing something that, I think it's really important to get rid of all of those feelings too, and know that because you want to bring something into sex to level up your sex life is not a comment or a judgment on your sex partner. They're not doing anything wrong. You're just adding more things in to make it delicious.
I think a really good comparison is if you look at sex toys as tools, I mean, almost everything in human life, we have adapted to using tools. We eat with utensils or, chopsticks or a fork, but you can also eat with your hands. That's doable, obviously. And similarly, if you're building a house, nobody's going around being like, yeah, well, it's not a real house because you use power tools. Like you didn't do it all by hand. You didn't sand it by hand. You've got to you used
Yeah.
a sander. Like nobody
Yes.
sees other aspects of life as being compromised when we use a tool. So I think that viewing toys as a competitor can be shifted into being like, this is a collaborative item I am
Ah,
using with my
I
partner.
I
love
love
that
this.
so much.
Oh, I just need some more tools for my toolbox.
So we were sent ahead of this the +1 sex toy. It looks like this. I'm going to show you everyone the box again. It looks like this. And when you
Plus one.
open it up,
I have one here as well.
you have one here. It's very soft. Feels amazing. Um, okay. And it comes with this situation too. So you need to charge it. Okay. So tell us
Mhm.
about this particular sex toy.
Yeah, that is a something I would loosely categorize as a vibrating bullet. The name comes from they used to make them out of hard plastic and like put a silvery finish on them, which is where it got its name. But it really is just a term that refers to any small or compact vibrator.
Hmm.
Okay.
And what's really great about small vibrators is that you can put them into, smaller spaces, fit them between bodies more easily. A bullet is not insertable just because it's a little too short and definitely not like butt safe. But there's also like toys that have a hollow hole inside of them, like a dildo or a plug. They'll have like a little hollow base where you can stick the vibrator inside to make another toy vibrate. A lot of cock rings also work that way. You like slip it through. Um, or in harnesses, if you're having like a strap-on sex and using a harness and a dildo, a lot of people like to put vibrators into the harness so that the person wearing it can feel the vibration.
I didn't know that there were sex toys that were made to have other sex toys added. I'm
Oh
learning so
yeah,
much
they're
today.
very interactive. And like same with the wands too. There's like all these attachments you can plop on top that do make them insertable.
Hmm.
This particular sex toy is especially safe.
And as much as a sex toy can be, yes, absolutely.
I mean, like the materials that it's made of and things like that,
Yes.
that way. Okay.
I'm familiar with the brand and the people who make it, and they are pretty well known as a manufacturer. So yes, I definitely think that it's like a solid brand.
Before we dive into questions, I saw something in our pre-notes that had me fall on the floor. And that was that, is it true? Please tell me it's not true. I'm hoping that we made a mistake. If you order a toy from Amazon, there is potential that that toy is a returned toy that you're now getting.
I don't work at Amazon, so I can't tell you exactly
Okay.
what their methodology is. But in general, I run into this issue as a store that does not accept returns or exchanges because
Okay.
otherwise it would compromise the health and safety
For
of my
sure.
customers.
Okay.
So obviously, if something is defective or broken or there's some type of issue with it, that is a very different story.
But basically, if you're buying sex toys from a place that accepts refunds or returns,
We're not sure that we're not guaranteed on what we're getting.
they could be recirculated.
That's
Well,
why we're all going to Spectrum Boutique. No one, we're everyone log off of Amazon right now, take it out of your cart. and go to
Yeah.
Spectrum.
Fearmonger in saying
No,
that either,
no.
because there are so many legit awesome brands that have like their storefront on Amazon.
Okay. We just need to do our research.
It's just like how a lot of lingerie is not returnable.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I'm just saying it's just something that never crossed my mind. And
Yeah.
so like if you're just do your research. I would not have looked I wouldn't have even thought about having to look and research that. I think I think just reading that possibility was so shocking to me. We have questions from the crew. They wrote in specifically for you. Okay,
Yes.
so Sarah said, I would like to know what are the best moves to be doing being a girl so that doesn't feel like my boyfriend is doing all of the work. I feel like I don't know how to move right, and I don't want it to always be him doing the work. I would like to be better help. What do you advise for this? What are some moves?
Yeah. Girl needs some moves.
I definitely don't have like the special magic
Yes.
bullet answer. I think
Yes.
that a very boring answer is ask your
Yeah.
partner. I think that if you want really specific like moves and stuff, I think that's also again where I don't want to say that porn is like an education for that.
I was gonna say porn because I wanted to ask this question. I would like to know, like, for if Sarah would like to, if Sarah's a visual learner and Sarah wants to get some help, is there a place to go to for well lit, some storyline
She
Yeah,
likes
yeah.
involved?
production value, Jessica
I
does.
want production value, high production value porn for Sarah. I want her to be able to look at it and also like not judge herself for looking at it and be like, I'm imagining that, Sarah, maybe you wouldn't. But where she can go where it's like, okay, that's a creative move that I can have, right? Because she's saying I don't know what to do and he's doing all the work.
I want to make sure I do clarify though that so much of porn is stuff that is just done for camera. So there's a
Yeah.
huge difference between watching like a studio production where there is a whole
Yeah.
set and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
versus watching like an independent creator who's like on a webcam who is like maybe doing things with their partner. Like this category is often referred to as like amateur, but
Mm.
there's a huge difference between like, there's a couple on webcam versus like there's all this studio set and setup. So I don't want everyone thinking like, whatever you see in porn, go do it. It's gonna feel great. So much of sex is like in the brain, and like the brain is the biggest sexual organ in that way. So like also tying in the dirty talk and like foreplay, it's all kind of like building up this pressure cooker in your brain of like the fantasy component or lack thereof, getting excited and anticipating what's going to happen later in the day.
Technically, I mean, like girl on top. Those are some moves. I mean, like you're doing some moves if you sit on top of a guy, reverse cowgirl. You're on top, you're facing the other way.
Yeah, there's benefits of being on top because you're
And you,
able to control your bodily movement a little
yes.
bit more.
Okay, wait, I really want to get to another one. So this one is anonymous. Is it normal to feel shame after masturbation? I get a wave of sadness and shame. I don't know why, as it's something I'm not shy to talk about, and it is a healthy part of life, but for some reason I feel disgusted when it's me.
Jessica,
Yeah,
you
I
have
think
this phrase that you always say, like, we got to get curious. I feel like you
Yeah.
got to get curious with yourself, right? In a situation
Yeah.
like this and ask yourself why.
Yeah. Which goes back to what I think you were saying earlier, Zoe, about, where in your development was that idea introduced? Who in the story of your life said, masturbation is disgusting? Because likely someone said it. And I think that that would be a good place to start.
Mm.
absolutely. I think a lot of questions are kind of hinging on, is this normal or not? And this is a perfect example of a question like that. There is no such thing as normal. So it is, I think like maybe the question is also like, is this a thing that other people experience? Because if, it's normal, there's nothing wrong with your feelings and how you feel. Um, shame is like a natural emotion we all feel, but having it towards pleasure can be really confusing and contradictory. And obviously, if you want to change that, and it sounds like you might want to if you're asking this question, um, I think that there's like so many different ways you can have intimacy with yourself that again is not directly sexual and can get there. For
Hmm.
some people, that means like just doing external stimulation and building up comfort with that. But I guess what I really want to make sure is said though is that like it's normal in the sense that like there is nothing wrong with you for feeling that way. Does everybody feel that way? No. A lot of people definitely feel that way because that is societally the message we all kind of receive.
But if you don't want to feel that way, there is a path forward. And if you don't want to feel disgusted with
Absolutely.
yourself, there is a path forward. And I think that you will find it. Again, I think that the getting curious and talking to people around you, I think there's real safety in numbers about this kind of stuff, right? Like you when you see someone else having a similar experience or when someone's talking about it and they have no shame, that might be a little contagious, right? You might think, oh, that's that they don't have any shame, so maybe I don't have any shame. Okay, I just want to get to this very last one, and then I want to thank you so much for your time. My
Yes,
sister
absolutely.
Sasha was the one who brought you to us, and I'm so
Yes.
grateful to her. She knows all of it. Okay, the last question is from Anonymous again. Is it healthy for me to be so noisy during sex and my boyfriend not to be until he actually reaches climax? Also, why can't I climax with actual sex inside of me? I feel like so many people want to know this. I feel like I
So
hear the answer,
common.
but you go for it because you
Totally.
know.
Uh, okay, so the first part of that question, there's absolutely nothing wrong. It's actually with a lot of things where people are like, I do this differently for my partner. It would honestly be like more unusual for you to be the have the exact same libido as your partner to make the exact same amount of noise. So there's always going to be differences in how we express how we feel. So no, I mean, unless you're like, oh, I want to be more respectful of the neighbors. I mean, the neighbors, but anyways. But
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
And then she's asking why she can't climax with actual sex inside of her.
I think that going back to the lack of awareness we have about the clit, um, the clit is the external clitoral stimulation is required for the vast majority of people to have an orgasm. So if there's no clitoral stimulation, if you can have an orgasm without direct external clitoral stimulation, you are actually statistically like that is just less so a thing. I can put that in a I can put that more succinctly.
You are in the minority if you are climaxing
Yeah.
during sex
Yes,
with,
Yeah.
exactly.
yeah.
Thank you for putting that so eloquently. And I think a lot of people don't realize that the clit is also an internal organ, and the external part that we see is just like the tip of the iceberg. So much of it goes inside and between the vaginal canal and the belly side, essentially,
Hmm.
is like the whole body of the clitoris. So you are stimulating the clitoris from inside when you are having penetrative sex. And that's not to say that there aren't other pleasurable spots within the vagina that feel really good. But if you are not giving direct contact to the clit, that is most of the time the culprit for having a hard
Okay.
time achieving orgasm.
Is that what that silver situation would be getting to more first?
Oh, the G spot
Yeah.
internally.
That out of purpose.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Its
mean,
popularity could be explained.
definitely.
Oh my gosh. There's going to be a part two for sure.
Oh, there's a part
I would
four.
love
Just kidding. This
to.
is the beginning. Thank you so much for
Thanks for
joining us.
being
We
on.
have so many more questions from the crew we have to get to next time. And please come back.
It would be my pleasure.
Teach
Thank
us
you so much
more.
for the wonderful questions. I think that these are all really great and honest and vulnerable questions. And I appreciate you coming, letting me come shed a little bit of light
Yes,
on that.
and now that we, obviously you have your Spectrum boutique. I'm imagining you have an Instagram handle.
Yes,
Yep.
my personal account is Thongria, like the underwear, Thongria, or you can just Google my name, Zoe Ligon. But It's a lot of sex toys, obviously. You'll be prepared if you search me.
Okay, great.
Fantastic. We
Thank you
love
so
that.
much,
Thank you
Zoe.
so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Continue to send us in your questions, your queries, because we will have her back on. This is going to be a continuing thing. We're learning with you guys too, as you can tell. And Jessica, you want to call it?
Let's call this the end of the beginning of lots more episodes.
Oh, I like that.